cheer up. It's not that bad, is it? Come on. Everybody's got problems. Plenty of people have it worse than you. Odds are you've either heard these sentiments or you've said them yourself. Most often, they are offered in the spirit of trying to help. They are congenial. They are meant to be encouraging. They are meant to give perspective. They are meant to reassure or to help lift someone off the ground. 9 times out of 10, that's why people say such a thing. They want to help. Do those phrases really do all that much? When is the last time you heard somebody say, cheer up, and you took that command and you said, oh yeah, of course, absolutely. Let me do that straight away. When's the last time those words really did penetrate us and pull us out of the mire? When's the last time that it really made us feel any better to hear, come on, it's not that bad, or other people have it worse? We may, in time, start to have that perspective, have that ability to look back and say, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. We have that sometimes with a breakup or the loss of a job or something like that. Sometimes we're able to get the perspective and say, no, it's not that bad. And that does happen. But what if the thing we have to cheer up from, or the thing we need to try to get over, is not some external event or something like a breakup or the loss of a job or failing a test or whatever? What if the thing we were facing down was our perception itself, our very heart, our very soul, our very mind? What if that is the very thing we were contending with? How easy is it really to simply command yourself to cheer up or to get over it? Can we make ourselves get up and go to work, or get out of bed, something like that? Absolutely. People fighting the battles of major depression do that daily, every day. However, through sheer force of will, it's not quite as easy to simply command your mind to feel better, to feel different, to suddenly don the perspective that, oh, other people are suffering, therefore this internal struggle I have, it's not as bad. Shame on you, my damaged mind. You lack perspective. I can't believe that this illogical, brutal force in my mind wouldn't be clearly rational and something with which I could argue and present evidence to dissuade it from its attacks on me. You will, I hope, forgive me for the sarcastic remark, but this does lead to a very common thing that we encounter. People insisting, people meaning well, but still encouraging us to just get a better view on things and just feel better. When you live with major depressive disorder, or really any variety of mental illness, if it were a matter of choice and one could elect to just cheer up, I can assure you that 9 times out of 10, people would choose to do that. What we have to remember is that this battle is internal. It's not out in the world. It's within us, in our mind. And as we can recall that perception is reality, then we are fighting against our very ability to see the world itself. Most of us don't choose to not cheer up. Many of us may not even remember what it may feel like. So think for a minute. You're talking to somebody, and somebody struggling with this kind of thing, somebody who's got these demons, this internal battle. They're not just having a bad day. They didn't just screw up a test or, make a mistake. They're fighting something hard. Now, imagine that what you're meeting them with is, come on, it's not that bad. Other people have it way worse. What do you think goes through the mind of that other person? If it's a person struggling with depression, or a person whose esteem, is just at the absolute bottom of the barrel, they're as low in themselves as they can be. If we then point out, well, other people have problems, other people have it so much worse, all that kind of stuff, what actually is the desired outcome? Because what happens to that person that's already that low in themselves, that low in their spirit, they don't suddenly snap out of it and say, oh my God, you're right. I lack complete perspective. My depression is all crap. And I didn't think about the people that are starving and the people that are sick or the people that are this, that, or the other thing. I know there are people that wish it would work that way, but it doesn't. What actually happens is that person now piles on, yeah, you're right. There's other people that got way worse problems. You miserable, whiny piece of garbage. Look at you. You're you're the worst. So now we're going to pile on some guilt on top of this, some shame on top of this. Some part in the back of their head is saying, see, I knew you were just garbage. And look at this, complaining to people. And whereas if one were having just a bad day, or one were not just not themselves one day, and they, something like that, tough love as it might be, you could snap them out of it. I've seen it happen. I know that's a thing. But this is where we're talking about mental illness. If you're immune to joy, you're definitely not like everybody else. So what do you think happens when the person is told, oh, it could be so much worse, or you just got to get over it, or this, that, the other thing. And it's all just, what they hear is, all your problems are BS. Like, who cares? And you are taught, man, I need to keep my freaking mouth closed. I don't need to talk to anybody about this because they're just going to make me feel worse. And I'm going to look even worse because I dared to say, hey, I'm struggling. Well, somebody else is struggling worse. Therefore, I guess that doesn't matter, right? In fact, none of us should ever complain about anything ever, right? We have to find the one person in the world that has it worse than anyone. They had every limb chopped off. They have every disease. They've lost everyone they've ever loved. They've had the worst horrors that man could conceive inflicted upon them and everyone they know. That one person gets to have a bad day. That one person gets to be maybe down in the dumps or have a little bit of an off day. Because if we're going to go down that road, we have to be consistent, right? We have to commit to that. And we have to say, okay, well, if someone has it worse, I guess that means we must feel better. So everybody, suck it up. If you feel that way, why don't you and I, let's go down to the burn ward and say, hey, come on, it's not that bad. There are plenty of people that got it worse than you. Let's see how far that goes. Let's see how much success we have. Oh, right. If it's physical pain or something we can see or something that, is quote unquote here in the real world that we can touch. Oh, well then yeah, man, I'm sorry about that. That's tough. Such is the way with mental illness. If they can't see it, it's not real. And let me again say, I'm not suggesting that most people are that callous or callow. I know they're not. People that offer the "it could be worse" thing, they're sincerely trying to help. They're sincerely trying to offer perspective. They're sincerely thinking that they're going to do you some good. You don't see what I see. It's not as bad as you think it is. I know that's what you're saying. I know you mean well. So please don't take any of my, sarcastic remarks to be in any way castigating, because it's not. But I'm going to that extreme end and following it through to this fallacious, scenario, just to kind of demonstrate the point of we wouldn't do that to certain other people. But we will do that to people that are suffering internally. Now, I recognize that many folks can't identify. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what it feels like. They haven't been there. I know. I get it. And for many of them, when they see somebody that is struggling and they can't get over or whatever, or they might even open up and tell you about what's going on with them, we can only relate to that in the sense of, I know what it's like to be sad or to feel loss or feel this, that, or the other thing. So this notion of a perpetual loss, a perpetual grief, a perpetual self-loathing from which you cannot extract yourself, it just doesn't compute. There's an interesting study I'd like to bring up here. When we offer these encouraging phrases, we want to cheer people up, and it's all the things we've already said, but you've heard it all before. You'll do better next time. It's not that bad. Come on, cheer up. These little, let's call them pick you ups. They're always well-intentioned, as I said. But in 2014, there was this paper published, and it was in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And what it did was it kind of examined this use of encouraging phrases and whatever, within the context of the receiver, the listener's self-esteem. Now, this is not directly connected to mental illness, depression, all that kind of stuff, but can we at least agree that there is a corollary between low self-esteem and major depressive disorder? I think that would be a fair thing for us to say here, a fair line to draw. So anyhow, the University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier University, they ran several experiments, and they were kind of evaluating the best support, best ways to support people, best support for people with different levels of self-esteem. And there's two things that in particular they kind of took a look at here. And so there's one thing that's called positive reframing. Now, this is kind of what I've been talking about this whole time. With positive reframing, I mean, the name even sort of, gives the game away, sort of tells you what we're talking about here. But it's this attempt to put negative events, negative feelings, whatever, in their quote unquote proper perspective. So this is it's not so bad, other people have it worse, cheer, you'll do better next time, whatever. All those kinds of things. We're trying to reframe it. Again, it's most of the time a very well-intentioned thing. And I know I keep bringing that up, but I feel it's necessary to belabor that point, because I do understand why people say that. I never get mad at people for positive reframing. I don't, resent them for it. I don't think they're ignorant because they're just, throwing platitudes at a problem. Like, I don't think that at all. They're doing what they know. They're doing the best they can. And that's why I'm doing this right here. I'm hoping to bring a perspective to people that they may not have considered. So when people listen to me here, I imagine, or I hope, and I know, this isn't a big podcast or anything like that. I don't have a ton of listeners or anything, but I'm willing to bet if we could survey, and maybe if somebody's listening to this, like on YouTube or something, like comment and tell me. But I bet you if you've had depression, I'm telling you stuff you already know. Even if it hasn't been spelled out this way, I'm telling you something you maybe even just implicitly understood. Or as soon as I say it, it's like, yeah, that's what it feels like. After my first episode, some people had talked about how that riptide and how I look at depression through that undertow. They said, man, that's how I feel. Like, I never thought of it that way, but yeah. So I'm willing to bet many people with depression, they're not hearing something brand new. I'm not going to blow their minds. But I'm hoping that if you don't know a lot about this, you might get a perspective into that world. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to do right here, right now. So on this positive reframing thing, well-intentioned as it may be, what did that study find about positive reframing? Believe it or not, they found that not only does the positive reframing not resonate with people with low self-esteem, but they found it could actually backfire and make the comforter feel worse about themselves because their comforting isn't working. So the person offering the reframing may feel even worse because they see it's not working. And in some cases, that could potentially damage, or at least the perception of damage to their relationship with that person could be a reality. And so not only did the reframing not work, but then it caused the people that were offering it to question themselves. It really did have a kind of double-barreled impact, potentially. And so you might say, well, gosh, like, did anything work? Did anything help? Now, again, we're thinking about support behaviors here. So we're trying to help somebody through a difficult time, or we're trying to help people get through something. What they found was there was something else, and it is called negative validation. Now, that sounds probably kind of bad, and I think it's because of our preconceived notions about the word negative and the word validation. So let's just consider this for a moment. With negative validation, we'll use their definition. According to the study, negative validation, this is support behaviors that communicate that the feelings, actions, or responses of the recipient are normal and appropriate to the situation. That's negative validation. What you're saying, think about that for a second. The feelings, actions, and responses of the recipient, the person that's being supported, they're normal and appropriate to the situation. They're not saying that they're even right, correct, decided. They're saying they're normal and appropriate. Now, that's what we mean when we talk about validation. We're saying, if this is valid, like, okay, I get it. I understand it. I'm not saying it's true. We're not evaluating the verisimilitude of somebody's feelings right now. In other words, we're not evaluating the truthiness of their statements. We're evaluating the validity. And we oftentimes use that interchangeably. But like a valid argument would be one that is logically sound. It makes sense. So in this case, what are we talking about? Well, if we say that their behavior, is appropriate, normal, whatever, it makes sense is what we're saying. If we offer a support behavior that doesn't treat them like you're not responding appropriately, then they're going to respond a little bit better. They're going to be more open to what you have to say. So what they found was this negative validation actually did resonate with people that had the low self-esteem. And interestingly enough, people with high self-esteem, they tended to respond well to either the positive reframing or the negative validation. So the negative validation actually resonated with low self-esteem folks and even some high self-esteem folks, whereas the positive reframing only seemed to work with people with high self-esteem already. So let's think about it for a second. Why don't people with low self-esteem respond to the positive reframing? Well, like we said, it's this thing where let's use an example from the study. So if you took an example, let's say about, someone positively reframing someone else's anxiety, let's say about a job interview. Maybe the interview didn't go well, whatever. The researchers wrote that the quote, positive reframing may suggest to some that their anxiety about the upcoming event is unfounded and that their relationship partner does not truly understand or accept their feelings. The comforter then may also react negatively to the comfortee's lack of response. And it starts this kind of negative cycle. The comforter might be, man, I'm doing everything I know to help you, and nothing works. And then the person being comforted feels bad that they're making this other person feel bad, which, it's a cycle. It just keeps going and going. I bet if you think back, you may know somebody, or it may have been you yourself, that have been in that very negative cycle where you can't feel better and someone's trying to help you feel better through positive reframing, and then it doesn't work, and then they get frustrated or they get disappointed or they get upset or something like that, which makes you feel worse, which makes them feel more, like it just keeps going and going and going. It just never ends. It's a true negative cycle. And cycles are exactly what depression feeds on. Depression thrives on these dark cycles. And so, believe it or not, this positive reframing in and of itself, just only sticking to that method when we're trying to support somebody going through something, in the wrong scenario, I'm not saying it happens every time. The cycle doesn't kick off with everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But in the right set of circumstances, if the conditions for this storm are correct, you can get this freaking hurricane swirling around as this cycle just feeds itself between the person trying to comfort and the person receiving the comfort, or supposed to receive the comfort. So it's something we don't think about very much. It's something we don't think about very often. But it's true. It really is. Now, this is not to say that the people trying to cheer, someone up, what I call them before, like the pick you up people kind of thing. I'm not saying that they're bad friends or bad partners, or that they lack empathy, or that they're incapable of understanding, or anything like that. I'm not saying any of that at all. It's hard. It's just simply hard for people that have high self-esteem, that have never been through these trenches. It's just hard for them to slip into, an empathetic mode to deal with somebody who lacks self-esteem, who lacks that sense of well-being, who is in the trenches of depression. They even cited like research showing people who know when to steer clear of positive reframing have a tendency to slip into it, even when they're not supposed to. So in other words, like someone with high self-esteem, like it's just hard for them to not go into that realm of positive reframing, even when you're not supposed to. And I'll make you feel even better. I don't have good self-esteem. I'm not somebody who has high self-esteem. I'm not somebody who is free of this depression thing. I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't fighting it. More on that later. But I'm guilty of positive reframing. There's some sort of logic to it when it's not us that really makes sense to our minds. We want to be logical creatures. We really do. And so we will go to great lengths to try to be logical. And when we want to help somebody who's struggling, particularly if they're in an emotional state, we try to be the voice of reason. That's what we're going to be. That's how I'm going to help. I'll be the voice of reason. I can see that the sun is out right now. The sun is going to rise tomorrow. We can get over this. It's going to be okay. And as somebody who deals with it, let me tell you, I'll be the first to admit it is and can be exhausting dealing with someone who appears to just simply refuse to let it go or feel better or get over it or whatever we want to say. But we have to remember it's not necessarily that they refuse. They may not be capable right now. And like I said, this is true for people that are well-versed on the mental health stuff. I'm here to tell you. I mean it. I have gotten to the point before talking to people, and I've tried every approach, everything I know to do. And I want to just somehow inject into their mind and just say, stop seeing it this wrong way. It's not what you think it is. All is not lost. We become victims to these cognitive distortions. We talk about that a lot in cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'm going to do some episodes coming up about those more in depth. But let's say that a cognitive distortion is when our thinking is, going a little haywire. We think we see things clearly, but we don't. So let's take one of my favorites is catastrophizing. So what happens if I'm catastrophizing? I see just everything is just the worst, the end of the world kind of thing. It's very common, exceedingly common. People who don't have depression will fall victim to these cognitive distortions. Happens all the time. And it can be tough to deal with someone who is in the midst of this grip of seeing just everything is ashes. It's all coming to an end. And you can see without the cloud of that emotion in your eyes, you can see that it's not that way. It's not so bad. There's a way out of this. And when we want to positively reframe, we're trying to be that helpful partner, that person that's like, everything is collapsing around us. The building's coming down. Somebody's got to be calm, rational, put together to get us out of here. And if I'm positively reframing, I'm going to get us out. No, we're going to find a way out. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And like I said, I'm not saying positive reframing doesn't work for anybody. But again, what we're talking about here is people with depression, people with mental illness that prevents them from seeing things the way maybe everybody else does. So believe it or not, this is one reason why that negative validation is so important. It's so helpful, at least as a starting point. Because here's the crazy thing. If you can get somebody to trust you, to feel like you have a dialogue, to feel like they can open up and let the steam out of the steam valve a little bit, the catastrophe in their mind, the maelstrom up there can calm down a little bit. And sometimes then they can see that way out. Because now this beast isn't completely blocking their view, because they're able to drain a little venom out. This is actually a big part of training to work with on a suicide hotline. I learned a lot when I started taking trainings from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and start reading the literature, talking to the people that run that stuff and everything. And I will fully admit, I have called the suicide hotline number. I know plenty of people who will share that number as a matter of trying to be a good Samaritan. I don't know many people that have admitted to calling it. And I have. And here's what I can tell you. What they do when you call there, sometimes they refer to it as befriending. So what they call befriending is they say, all right, do not tell the callers that what they should do is go for a walk around the block. Now that's, advice we may give to people all the time. And I'm someone who fully agrees that physical activity has a demonstrable effect on our mood, our outlook, our, health, obviously, all that stuff. I am fully in the camp of that kind of thing can be good for us, especially long term. Guess who doesn't need to hear that? Somebody who doesn't know if they want to live tomorrow. They also don't tell callers that everything's going to get better. That may not be true. For many people, when they're having a depressive episode or a suicidal moment, they may just be in the midst of great emotional turmoil or great loss. There are other people that struggle with that have terminal problems that truly won't get better. And many times those very people will call a hotline. And can you imagine telling somebody with a terminal disease that just wants out, or telling somebody who has lost their whole family, that lost their livelihood, and they're just on the street. They have no one, they have nothing. Can you imagine having the gall to tell them, oh, it'll get better, the sun's going to rise tomorrow? We have to always remember that we don't know what anybody else is going through. And so, what do we have to do? If you're working those calls and you need to use negative validation rather than positive reframing, how do they use the negative validation? They simply validate their feelings. They're simply present. They offer consolation to the best extent they can. They say, I hear you. They say, I'm so sorry. They say, tell me about it. Talk to me. You don't have to do much to offer negative validation to somebody, to offer them that support. Rather than trying to reframe something, and maybe something happened, maybe they bombed some entrance exam to a school they're trying to get into, maybe they really screwed up at work, maybe something terrible happened in their personal life, maybe it's nothing that happened at all, they're just going through the dark time. If you start with, man, that sounds really bad, I'm really sorry you're going through that. Tell me about it. Talk to me about it. What's going on? That can be so much more successful in getting the person to feel better, to get them to feel more supported, and to help that dialogue and the beginning of draining that venom from the wound. It's so much faster than just reassuring them, oh, you'll do better next time. Everything will be okay. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. If they're in the grip of it, they may just want to be heard. Why do you think it's such an important thing for people dealing with this to see psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, whatever, going to a place where you can talk freely? You could even say the words, I don't want to live anymore. You could say all these kinds of things. And you're in a place where there's no judgment there. That's a huge part of it. And I can tell you from experience, that's not always the case when you talk to friends, people you know, even people that mean well, even people that care. You don't know when it's safe to be honest. And when people reframe it, you instantly feel like, okay, well, this person doesn't give a crap about what I'm going through, or they think it's all, bull crap, or, whatever. So I better just cut it short here. And the sad reality is that's the truth. Many people do think it's bullshit. Many people don't quite understand it. I've, in my years as a band director at different high schools, I came to be aware of the fact that, and as you can see here, I'm fairly open about my illness and everything. But I'll tell you some interesting things about it. I haven't been honest on a job application yet when it came to asking me if I have that. Because that bias is still out there. That stigma is still out there. And so I have lied on every job application past 20 years. Now, if people talk to me, I'll tell them, but I won't put it on that piece of paper. And maybe that'll get me in big trouble. Maybe my boss listens to this. Sorry. But I feel like I have to. Now, why do I feel like I have to? Well, in my time as a band director, I'd be open about this. I'd talk about this. I've written music about it and, full albums about this kind of thing. And I've been kind of open about this sort of stuff. I've never really been a popular guy. I've never had tons of friends. Most people don't care for me, so it didn't really bother me if everybody thought I was great or everybody thought I was terrible. It didn't matter to me either way. I'd love it if I wasn't a source of irritation for others, but there that is. But I became aware of the fact that there were, several colleagues that would make fun of me, said some derogatory things about, my, me being, let's just call it quote unquote crazy and stuff like that, or just being super dark and dismal and quote unquote emo and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, it's always reduced, like major depressive disorders reduce that way. You complain too much, or you're too dark, or you're goth, or you're emo, or you're this, that, whatever dismissive little thing we can throw out there for somebody who isn't as well adjusted as me. And that's fine. I've been dealing with that my whole life. And that's not even just in the professional world. I've dealt with that all through the professional world. You almost come to expect it. That's why I lie on those applications. But I've dealt with it in the music world. I mean, for years before I even started being super honest about the reticent stuff, but even just then, like, I've been called, sad boy, pussy boy, this, that, and the other thing by bandmates. I've been called that by people in the quote unquote scene. I've, other bands and everything. And many of these people would be folks that would glad hand with me, especially when I could do them something like a favor, or I could put them on a show, or I could do them some good. Man, like, oh man, you're the man, you're awesome, you're a genius, you're this, that, and the other. And when I'm not away, or when I'm not around, they would just dog me hard. And some of them like don't even know that I know. Some of them are still like friends with me on social media and will like react to my stuff or something like that. And I'll be as if I don't know how bad they dogged me back in the day. But maybe they changed. Maybe they grew up. Maybe they changed their perspective. I can tell you that more than one person, in fact, I'll give you two examples. One guy in his 50s, one guy in his 60s. These are two tough guys, and I mean classic tough guys. They are, one's like, I'll ride motorcycles and work on them and all this kind of stuff, does mechanical work with their hands, tall guy, was a football player, big, strong, this, that, and the other thing. That's the guy in his 60s. The other guy, same kind of deal, like, just real smart guy, tough guy, big guy, looks like a freaking Viking king kind of thing, real into metal and all this kind of stuff, and does all these other things. So these are very traditionally like alpha kind of guys. And they faced all of a sudden a bout of depression, which they had never encountered in their life before. They'd lost people had died, they've had tragedies, they've had all this kind of stuff, but they had never had something take hold of them like that riptide and just pull down. Never stopping, never resting, not giving them a second to breathe. And it was frustrating because This was not a problem they could fix. There wasn't something to tighten. There wasn't something to hammer. There wasn't something to hit. There wasn't something to anything. It was just in them. The immunity to joy had come for them. Nothing brought them good feelings. Everything was taken. And one of them even had to quit his job because he became almost immobile. It was a struggle for him to even get out of the bed, to even feed himself. And this put a great strain with him and his wife. And he eventually had to reach out. He eventually sought some help as well. And I can recall as he got better, as he started talking, as he started, opening up about this stuff, and he eventually needed a little medication as well. But he said flat out, I kind of always thought this stuff was bullshit. And I can't believe how wrong I was. He said, I had to deal with that for a year. I do not know how anybody goes through that for a lifetime. And a friend of mine, my other friend, same kind of deal, just struggling with this. And something he said to me was, I can't talk to anybody about this because everyone just tells me, just cheer up or buck up or man up or this or the other thing. Up to and including people that are supposed to be the closest to him, like his romantic partner and everything like that, Your wife's supposed to stand by you and support you. But if she's even saying, oh, come on, you need to be a man, or you're supposed to be able to take anything, I can't believe you're not strong enough for this, that, the other. So this like attacking of you're not strong, you're not a man, you're not this, that, and the other thing. I've talked to people that have had that exact thing. So maybe it's not positive reframing. It's just flat out like, oh, come on. What are you, a crybaby now? And it happens more than you think. It happens more often than you would think. And so what do these people do? Like, what do you think happens if you are just kind of thought to yourself, I don't even know how to talk about this or say this to anybody because it's supposed to be a thing I should be able to fix. And on the other end, you're surrounded by people who are just saying, well, come on, you're a tough guy, you're a man, you're this, you're that. What do? The positive reframing sure doesn't work because guess what happened to both those people? Both those people talked to me because they knew I was probably the only person they knew that would even understand. And I wouldn't judge them. And I wouldn't call them names. And I wouldn't tell them to just toughen up and all this other kind of stuff. I'd listen. I'd say, what's going on? Just talk. The misconception is people think you have to have some answer for people when they come to you and they're struggling or something like that. You don't have to have the answers. You don't have to know everything to say. You don't need to be a psychologist or something like that. You don't need to have a working background in cognitive behavioral therapy techniques and exercises to give people. 3 words once saved my life from a friend that just convinced me to talk instead of take some drastic action. What were the 3 words? Are you okay? That's all it took. That's almost a negative validation right there. Think about it. Most of the time, if you're asking someone, are you okay? And we mean it in the legit, real way of asking. Most of the time, that's already saying something seems like it's wrong. And that can open the door. And if you say, no, man, I'm not okay. If the response then is, tell me about it. I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on? And if you just listen, you're just present, you're just there. I'm making eye contact, or I'm nodding my head, I'm doing something to say, I'm hearing you. That can be huge. That could be freaking life-saving. Because I assure you, talk to the depressed people in your life, the people that are struggling with mental illness, the bipolar people, the people that are not completely making it through every day without a great deal of struggle and sacrifice. It's the biggest deal in the world if someone would just listen to them and not judge them, not tell them to get over it, not minimize everything. You just listen. You don't even have to agree with everything they think. You don't have to hear them say, oh man, this is the worst thing ever, and say, yeah, you're right. Again, we're not saying validate as in say, you're right about everything. You're so correct. Just say, I hear you. Acknowledge that they feel that way. Rather than say, well, you're wrong. The brain's an amazing thing. I give you a hallucinogen, I give you a pill of some kind, and it can make you see things that aren't there. And you might be freaking out saying, oh my God, there's this leprechaun right here on the ground. He's right by my feet. He's just coming at me. And everyone around you could be like, there's nothing there. And they could just dismiss you. But in your mind, to your brain, that is as real as your hand in front of you. Now, it may not actually be reality. Everyone around you may be right. But you, in that moment, you're going to have to deal with this hallucination. And so somebody saying there's nothing there, if you're freaking out, if someone says, okay, well, why don't we get on some higher ground, get away from it? They're not saying, oh, you're so right, I see the leprechaun. But I've been around people who've hallucinated. Sometimes to get them to calm down, you have to kind of go with it a little bit. I don't believe them. I'm just validating. I'm just making them not feel like an idiot. So, when we talk to people, cheer up is probably the last thing we need to say. And I don't say that as, in the idea that, the phrase needs to be canceled or I'm offended by it or anything. People are going to continue to say it to me. There's going to be some troll or something like that that'll comment on like a video or something of mine and say that like it's fine. It's fine. People are going to do what they're going to do. I'm simply saying that if we're saying those words with the intention of trying to help someone, if we want to help someone feel better, if someone has put it out there, I'm struggling, and you feel it incumbent upon you to offer something in response. And let's go a little bit further and say, hey, I want to offer something helpful. I want to give them some perspective. I want to give them something positive. I want to help somehow. Well, cheer up probably isn't going to do much. When's the last time it worked on you? Maybe it does. But for the vast majority of people, and what the research seems to suggest, is that that's not really the way to go about it. So I want you to try something. The next time you're in a conversation with somebody that is struggling, or that you can sense that is struggling, just try being present and offering some consolation. I guarantee you, they're not expecting you to have the answer. And if they want your advice on something like, how do I do this? How do I do that? They'll be direct. They'll say it. Hey, how can I do thus and so. When that question comes, man, give us all the detail you want. Go for it. Talk about every little thing about your suggestion or what you would do, this, that, or the other thing. There's and to again, italicize, I recognize that when people say these things, that 9 times out of 10, they mean well. And I know I've said that like 20 times, but I can't reiterate it enough that I understand the intent is good. There's a guy I really admire, and I've gotten a lot out of his book, his talks, all sorts of things. And that's a man named David Goggins. Now, David Goggins is, we could say reputedly, and we'll just leave it at reputedly, the toughest man alive. He's not the strongest man in the world. He's just the toughest, meaning like you can't hurt him. That's the name of his book, Can't Hurt Me. And you might think it odd that I talk about all this validation and then I bring him up because he's a big, like, get to work, get after it, all this kind of stuff, like, stay in the fight. He's that kind of guy. But the reason that I can still resonate with someone like that is because he's not trying to positively reframe anything. He's not saying, oh, just imagine how, this, that, or the other thing. He's not doing any of that. He's telling you to look suffering in the face and do it anyway. He tells people to confront their struggles, confront their shortcomings. And see, the thing is, he embodies something we talk about in CBT, which I'll talk about on a episode coming up soon here, which is action precedes motivation. The idea that sometimes we have to make ourselves do something even when we don't feel like it. Now, he's saying, sort of referencing this for like going for a run or lifting weights or whatever and all that kind of stuff. But for many people with depression, we have to experience that with just getting up to take the shower, getting up to go to work, not following through on, a plan to obliterate ourselves. And so he'll say many times, a quote of his is that motivation is crap. And being driven and fighting your demons and confronting your demons, like that's what it's all about and everything. And I don't think, I do not think David Goggins would want to sit and have a conversation about my low self-esteem or my this, that, or the other thing. But he also would not tell me to cheer up. He would only ask, like, what are you going to do about it? Now, in the wrong state of mind, that probably wouldn't be the best thing in the world to say. But in the right state of mind, it could be an action. It could be something that could help me. He's been through all kinds of hell. Abuse, physical torment, emotional scarring. Like, he's been through it, man. And so his solution was to callous his mind, as he called it, to deal with all this stuff. And these were things that he figured out as an adult. And he also says that I'm not expecting anyone to be like me. You do you. And I think we can all take a little something from everybody we meet. We can learn something from everyone that we come in contact with, whether we agree with them, disagree with them, like them, hate them, whatever. We can learn something from them about what to do, what not to do, how to see things, how to look at things, how to consider things. And so even someone like that mindset, that kind of like, don't quit, just keep fighting, keep whatever. Like, that still, to me, is not in the positive reframing realm. Because if we, simply acknowledge our demons, recognize they're real. Look up some of his Instagram things where he says, like, there's his voices, these things I'm fighting against, I hear them and they're real. These voices that tell him to quit or give up or this or the other thing, and he fights against them. That very same thing is analogous to what people struggling with depression feel. Like it is a battle. It's a daily thing. It's the consistency. We got to get up and we got to fight against this. And I'll get more into that kind of thing, like I said, with the action precedes motivation thing, as far as like, what can we that suffer with this, what can we do to fight back? Because I think he does have things to offer people going through it. But I wanted to just reference him just real quickly here at the end, because I don't know, I was talking about this the other day and someone kind of brought that up. So let me just close with, again, recognizing that what I'm talking about is specific while being broad. This may not apply to every single person on the face of the earth. No. I can speak for myself. I can speak for the people that I've talked with. That's not a sample size of the world. I can speak for what the research says. A little bit bigger sample size. But it's not everybody. And that's the thing about this mental health crap. It's going to be a little different for everybody. But that's why we should consider all these different perspectives. So I hope that the next time you talk with somebody going through it, as I said a little while ago, just experiment with a little negative validation. You don't even have to believe what they're saying. Just be present, be empathetic, offer the consolation that you can. When we say validate their feelings, we're simply acknowledging that they feel that way. We're not dismissing them. We're present in the moment. We recognize the suffering. We're not saying the suffering doesn't matter. We're not saying the suffering is not real. We're not saying the suffering isn't a big deal. We recognize it. Just being seen like that can be huge, like I said, because most of us, including David Goggins before he became who he became, most of us hide. And that negative validation can be the flag that can go up to let you know, hey, it's safe here. I'll hear you. We can talk. So I hope this has been of any use to any of you. If you listened this long and you got something out of it, I can't thank you enough. If you listened this long and you got nothing out of it, I can't apologize enough. Either way, thank you so much for being here, sharing this time with me again. I'm really glad you're alive. I'm really glad you're here. And I'm glad you're fighting through every day, getting up and doing what you have to do. I hope that will continue, and I hope victory waits for you tomorrow. I hope to talk to you soon.